All right, welcome everybody. So today we're going to take a look at this very unusual and what I think is very rare Belzer Vise Grips. So as you saw in an eBay finds episode, I showed this off a little bit. All right, so I actually did find what I presume is the original patent for that pair of Belzer Vise Grips. And this one's dated 1952. Now we know DRGM was only used up until around 1945-46, but from what people have told me, that right there is that extra character is a kind of an extension. So it's possible that this was made in the 50s. It's kind of an unusual patent because the way they're talking about it, they kind of sound like they invented the vice grips, which we know those vice grips have been around since the 20s. And it's not written like a patent like you see today. It's more written like a sales pitch. So yeah, kind of the way it's written almost like they're describing a pair of normal vice grips. There's really nothing in here until you get to kind of the diagram explanation, where they actually talk about specific pieces of the pliers. So if you look at that diagram, it's pretty much like the pair I have. It's almost exact. There's one minor difference, and that's these two rivets right here do not appear in the diagram. But other than that, it's exactly the same, even up to the markings for inch and millimeters on this scale. So here's a very similar patent that I found that was filed in 1948. Almost has an identical diagram. It's really just mirrored almost. If this Belzer one is just a rebranded version of this, and they just stamped their name on it, but this one doesn't have any scale on it, and I guess that's really the only difference between the two. So it got me to wondering why we didn't see this particular design after the 40s and 50s, when there was a lot of ones from a company called BMC that looked very, very similar to this, and that's actually where that Snell 1948 patent came from. So if you look at pretty much the universal vice grip design now, this one has a complexity level much greater than this in terms of manufacturing, and I would say also maintenance. So if you just count the number of rivets here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a spring, a bolt, and a release lever, and a bunch of pieces of metal with a little weld there as well. If you count the number of rivets in this one, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it looks like we got about 12 rivets in this guy. So the amount of manufacturing time, is about 4 times as great. And I know these rivets don't take a lot of time to put on, but when they were manufacturing these, I'm sure they had a press, and a guy would put the wrench under there, would hit those, and then you can see they got different sizes on here. So this would be multiple stages. Probably one guy would do one size, and then the next guy would do the other size rivets. But I definitely see one advantage to this design that's not in the modern design. If you notice how parallel the jaws are on this guy, and that's more of a result of this curvature right here, because this curve is what the adjustment bolt is riding on. That's how you change the opening. So the pivot point is way down here, whereas the pivot point on this one is much closer to the jaws. And that's another reason why you get the parallel action. Now I know they make parallel jaw versions of these. The true parallel ones, they're kind of funky. They have like a pole coming out. But that's one thing I see that you could get out of these that you can't get out of most modern vice grips. So just to give you a small example, we got a Knipex test fixture here for testing their adjustable pliers. So there we go, we're locked on, and we can turn this as we need. So this particular one does have an adjustment release lever, which I suspect was added after. But it's very hair trigger. If we take the other design Vise Grips, you can kind of see in there that we basically only have a grip on the edge of this hex shaft. So you can see it slipped there a little bit to the next tooth. So I wouldn't feel too confident about keeping that on there and turning something with it. So that's certainly an advantage of this type of Vise Grip if you need to grip onto a big piece of stock, a really thick piece of stock. These appear to be much better suited than these. So let's check the scale on this to see how close it actually is. So I've set it to 19 millimeters. So it looks like moving the bottom of the adjustment to 19, we're at about 23. So let's see where it ends up actually on 19. So it looks like it ends up being about 14. That could be because this has been worn down, but I don't think most people probably would never use that scale anyway. The plan for this guy is I don't think I'm gonna do any kind of full disassembly for a couple of reasons. Removing the rivets is possible, but you'll probably never find a matching rivet. And it still works, so there's really no reason to take it apart to do any type of repair. So what I think I'm going to do, it's really just kind of crusty. It doesn't move very well at all. I think I'm going to try to soak this in a volatile solution, probably in the sonic cleaner, to try to get all the gunk out. And then what I think I'll try to do is sharpen these jaws a little bit. They're a little bit worn down. We'll see if we can put a file to those. So these were definitely well used by somebody. Let's get as much of that gunk out of there before we soak it. So there was one rivet in here that's really quite loose. I'm debating about whether I should try to repeen that, but I probably would end up ruining that rivet. Alrighty, so I got this down in the sonic cleaner. I know people have been asking me to do some more detailed stuff on this. So this one really is not a good sonic cleaner. It's really just one of those like one hung low made in China brands. I don't even think it has a brand name on it, because the really good ones are extremely expensive. I think I picked this up for like $200, and this is a 15 liter. 15 liter in a decent brand would probably be around $1,500 for that size. So one of these days I want to get an Elma, which is a well-known German brand of sonic cleaners. But at this point I don't really justify spending that kind of money. So what I typically use in here is just any kind of cleaner. You can usually just use like dishwasher, liquid soap, or dish soap. Works fine. For heavy duty stuff I'll use like a degreaser. You just go to the local home store and pick up the cheapest degreaser you can find. And that typically works. But for this one I think I'm going to actually try to use some of this Bollistal, because it does say on here ultrasonic, 10% Bollistal, 90% water. So I just measured, I got 2.5 liters in there. So that would mean I need 250 milliliters of Bollistal. And 250 milliliters is just about 1 cup. So we'll put 1 cup of Bollistal in here and see what kind of job it does. Holy moly. It's kind of a strange reaction there. I guess maybe that happens when you mix it with water. Just some safety things. I've heard of stories about people breaking their fingers, putting their fingers in here when it's running. I don't think this one's strong enough to do that, but so normally you can see it kind of see the dirt kind of pushing away because this stuff's so cloudy now. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. All right, so we'll turn it on. We'll give it like a 5-minute cycle. And then, so what you're going to hear is it's really loud, so don't expect to hear anything after I turn this on. All right, so you can see after 5 minutes how much more dirty that water is. So yeah, I think I'll put it in for 5 more minutes. Alrighty, so you can see how dirty that water got just from those 2 cycles. And it looks like it did a pretty good job of cleaning that up. So I think we'll just rinse this off with some water. See if we can clean up the jaws a little bit. See if we can sharpen those. Alright, so I think I'm going to try to clean up these jaws a little bit. They're a little bit mangled. Try these new feared files I got. Yeah, the handles on these feared files are nice. And then I'm going to use some of these key files to kind of clean up the edges on there. Alright, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. We'll flip it over and hit the other side. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. Definitely is a lot sharper than it was. Now I think we'll lubricate this with some ballast-tool. What this brown stuff is that you see leaking out, that's actually rust. And I decided not to de-rust this because the outside looked pretty good, but apparently there must be some rust down in the rivets, the joints. But it's not that bad. I think I'll be alright. The only other thing I might do here, this pin right here is pretty loose, and sometimes it kind of binds on here, so it might be something I need to replace in the future. It looks like it got so much slop in it now that it's not fitting in there very well. So just a quick test. Let's see how it grips onto this piece of mild steel. Alright, well I think that's going to wrap it up for this one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and I'll catch you guys next time.